Hi, top of the day to you. Oh, I don't know where that one came from. Hello. Today's lesson, I wrote down in my notes to just be honest and just say how I got here. Um, so picture it. Friday the 13th, 2020. That was the last day, well, you all know this stuff of COVID, and at least in 2020, from my recall, we were in class, and that was like the last day that I remember of ever having like regular classes, like, before mass and stuff like that. So anyway, my observation, and as a science experiment and experimenter, I started off with a question. What did I put? Oh, and my observation was just this push to get back into this classroom. I'm not talking about mass on or off, and it's not a political thing, but I just mean what I just saw was a physical, real drive, a real push to make sure that kids were in class, and then it became political, and it's always like people talking about you and around you, students, instead of actually talking to you or listening to you. Anyway, so that semester was kind of crazy. So my question was, why the push? So it started with a basic question. That hypothesis really kind of led me to quitting education, which is how I got here on the Ides of March. So we started with an observation and a question. And I don't know, I wasn't sure how I'm going to start this whole thing, so I'm just going to start it from here. This is just, think about these lessons. It's just like right now I'm just building up a foundation, right? Again, they're really not going to make sense yet. They might not ever make sense, but I'm taking the risk, right? So you don't have to zoom in on this or anything, but this is for me to explain the starting point. So my question was, and I did this in an earlier video, which is teachers are always asked, what do we want kids to know? How do we know that they know it? And then what do we do if they fail? That's kind of the message we got. And so I just had a very simple question, which is, who's the we? Like, who's we? Because it goes from what do we want kids to know, blah, 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 and then it goes right into curriculum for you students. And so I'm asking on your behalf of the students, like, okay, you're doing all these lessons, you're doing all this work, but who's the we that's kind of driving this? So, good question, I thought. So, that started with the A. That led me to the NAEP, the National Assessment for Education, of Educational Progress. So what that is, it is called the Nation's Report Card. So anyway, that's the NAEP. The NAEP is governed by 26 people who are board members, and it's called the NAGB, Governing Board. So they govern this report card. They get their information from the NCES. And I did put this in a PowerPoint, but, multimedia in this case. Again, it'll come together. So the National Center for Educational Statistics, formerly Science, has 97 employees. So the science, they collect the data, they get the data, they give that data to the governing board. The governing board gives recommendations as to what states need to do for curriculum, just recommendations. So they get statistics, mandatory testing, that gets for the report card. And so I hope you can see this drive. I hope I'm making sense. How'd I get here, right? So anyway, this is all under the U.S. Department of Education. And under the U.S. Department of Education, it's the Secretary of Education that picks the board, and it's the president that picks the Secretary of Education. So a president, one secretary, 26 board members, and then we've got the statistics. Okay, then they give their recommendation, as a government entity, this might be a little bit of a leap, but it makes sense to me, is the College Board. The College Board is considered a nonprofit organization with a $1.1 billion revenue. But anyway, they're a nonprofit organization. There's 31 members on that board. And the College Board, as you know, you students know, is tied to SAT and especially now like more AP classes, since some colleges are not looking at the SAT scores anymore, so no surprise here. There's 5 big publishing companies. That's pretty much it. Any textbook you get is pretty much governed by these publishing companies, who, again, the SAT and the College Board. So the publishing companies, the information for colleges, and then that equals, wait, where am I? Gee. I just got to go with this. And then really you're just, there's $1.76 trillion student debt. So you are the focus here. Labor force, I guess, HI, oh, that fell down. And then J, the information, this is really not going to be in my specialty, but like when you turn on the radio and you hear things about education, there's conversations that are kind of guided by businesses that have a vested interest in education. So hopefully that makes sense. And that's not really going to, like I said, my specialty or expertise, and we'll move on to K later. But I think what's important here, at least for my purposes for this little mini lesson, is what I'm concerned with, or my focus of research, is with my question, the National Assessment for Educational Progress. My question is, what's its purpose, right? What's the intent? What's its function? And I guess, how can we trust it? So I'm doing research. Essentially what my project is right now is, imagine reading the fine print, when you just say, oh, just go ahead and accept the terms and conditions. I'm essentially reading the fine print and reporting back to you students because I'm your teacher in service. In what I just will call this is traditional school. Can you see this okay? Well, you'll have my voice anyway. We just got a little dark in here, didn't we? Progress is the key word here for the report card. And the definition of progress is forward or onward movement toward a destination. Okay. As I've said, in my imaginary school, you students are the priority. And priority, the definition of that is fact or condition of being regarded or treated as more important, to require being dealt with or done first, which is why you're number 1. So that sounds pretty big. So who do you trust in this case? And I'm not trying to have like this duality. What I'm trying to say is, I'm looking into, I think there's some issues in education, and I guess maybe that'll be the start of my next lesson, because as I'm doing research, within the past few months, I'm listening to board members from the NAEP making justifications and recommendations right now. This was 3 months ago, is the video that I think I have on my webpage, that, excuse me, that I have on my webpage that, goodness, oh no, I lost my focus. That's okay. Let me just kind of get back to this. So one report card, if I don't get back to that, one thing, I've been kind of traveling around and just really asking people really open questions, what's the purpose of education, which again is kind of my big question. And I'm getting some really interesting answers and conversations. But one thing that I think is very definite is that this is one lesson that you're never going to get in school. I guarantee it. Because this 26 members on this board, Now, in my research, these I'm not going to get into the personal or personalities of these 26 board members. I think there's a lot of people who want to kind of go after them. That's not what I'm about. In fact, I didn't even put their names on it, but I did put links to the 26 board members because it's open. I mean, you can find this online if you just look up NAEP, which again, we don't have time for that, right? So I did research on all of them, and not surprisingly, not surprisingly, they are pretty much consistent of government agencies and big business. I mean, that's kind of my observation. One in particular is considered a mega lobbyist for a tobacco company, which I think is suspicious. But again, my research isn't to go after them. It's just to provide you truth and some data, not data, the opposite of that, like behind the data as to why there's this push for you to get testing. And of course, my prediction is it's always going to be more. The board are making recommendations for more math and reading in particular right now. So I'm very interested in what the board is doing because it's in regard to you, and that's kind of what I'm all about here is in education. So, I'm going to leave the trust up to you. I'm going to just, like I said, keep looking into this, and I've just got so many, well, in iWorld, so many fun things. And I do want to say that I really feel like I'm onto something for those of you who kind of do have trusted me already. And these are students that know me. It's ready to get all aboard the Newsom train here. So I hope this makes sense. Because what I see when we talk about progress for us, what I keep coming up with is just follow the dollar sign. And I guess you can't see that. Oh well, we're just informal. And then for me, I'm looking at if the students are the priority, you are the one that I want to look out for. This is what I'm trying to do, which is research and find out kind of what's going on in the background. Hopefully this makes sense. And just keep you posted. And let's see, lesson 2. This is number 1. This all sounds so much better in my head, but again, give me a little bit of time, and I'm building up some good stuff, I think. All right, ciao for now.